If you sell insurance and you struggle closing your insurance sales, then you're going to want to watch this video. I'm going to give you my 7 top tips to close your insurance sales presentations better. So whether you're a new or experienced agent and are wondering how to close more presentations, then you'll definitely want to stay tuned. Greetings and salutations. This is David Duford, owner of Duford Insurance Group, where I train and recruit agents nationally to sell things like final expense, Medicare, and annuities, both face-to-face and over the phone. And the purpose and topic of this video is to give you my top 7 tips to close more insurance sales. I'm going to give you advice that I give to my agents that work in my national agency that when struggling to close, helps them get through the resistance that has come so common when it comes to selling insurance and how to keep on trucking. So let's jump right in with the first section. That is, first, you must pre-qualify. So you see, pre-qualifying is actually a precursor to closing. In other words, pre-qualifying means that we ask the tough questions earlier on to determine if our client is a qualified prospect, meaning somebody with a high odds of buying, or an unqualified suspect, which has a low odds of buying. I don't like to deal with the kind of resistance that a lot of people think of typically when they think of closing. All of the back and forth objections, the kind of pushiness. Instead of waiting to the end to deal with the tough items of a presentation, I like to deal with it earlier on. For example, in selling final expense, we start by talking about what the reason was the client requested the information, what they're currently doing for life insurance, what they want their life insurance coverage to do for them, and the answers that we get tell us a lot about the present state of mind the client's in, what matters to them, what doesn't matter to them, what they want to accomplish, what is their motive. And when you know the underlying underpinnings of how our client thinks and what their situation is with insurance, it becomes much easier to justify why they should do business today when we get to the close. So basically, if you want to close well, you got to learn how to open well, which means do a great job of pre-qualifying very early on. Second, you got to revisit the hot button issues. This ties back into really good pre-qualifying because when you go back and you ask really good questions, it allows you to determine what makes the client tick. When I know that they want to buy life insurance because their brother died and didn't have coverage and they don't want to be a burden, just like their brother was in their family and all the problems that came from it, I now have a hot button reason why to encourage them to make a decision today to buy life insurance. And if you use those hot button issues that you would have collected earlier on, at the time of the close, it reminds the client of why they are doing what they're doing, and more often than not, gets them pushed past that last little bit of effort or resistance to close the deal. Number 3 tactic I like to use when I close final expense or any insurance sales presentation is what I call a 2 or 3 option close. Let me tell you more about what that means. There's this kind of perspective that salespeople, if you go listen to the gurus of old, that you have to know like 5, 10, 20 different closing variations, and you've got to make this process of asking for the sale complex. Well, if you know anything about the work that I do, making the simple complex is a great way to fail. We instead want to do the opposite. We want to take something that's complex and make it simple. So there's really only one close that I teach all of my agents that sell insurance, and that is a 2 or 3 option close. Here's how it works. I simply have my agents write down 2 or 3 different options at 2 or 3 different price points for coverage. There is a good option, a better option, and then a best option, or a good and a best option. This gives our clients options, at least that's how they perceive it, so they have a perceived level of control in the decision to take action. And it also gives them the flexibility to make up their mind. Do they want the best package at the highest price, or do they just want the introductory type of package? This is the only closing strategy that I use. I don't use any other kind of Ben Franklin close or some other elaborate close. When it comes to selling, at least in my experience, life insurance and other products, you just show them a couple of options, make the options simple to understand. Number 4, let's talk about the closing statement that you're going to use when you present these 2 or 3 options to your client. And again, just like we talked about earlier, how complex should you make the closing statement? It's actually really simple. Here's exactly word for word what I ask my clients. Mr. Jones, Which one of these options do you want to go with? That's it. Maybe some kind of derivation that if I make a recommendation based off of something they said earlier. But ultimately, I ask them which one of these best fits what you want to accomplish. And I shut up and then listen to what the options are going to be. That's the only close that I use. I've presented, 3,000 presentations plus in the insurance business. I've taught thousands of agents how to sell insurance, and this is the only close that we ever use. Why would you want to use another one if a simple yet effective close does the job? Number 5 tip is silence. Silence is critical. A lot of people think sales is all about talking. It's about running your trap. Well, sure it is, I guess, to an extent, but it's also about keeping your lips shut at the appropriate times. There are times when silence makes all the difference, especially when closing your insurance presentation. So you need to be silent when? Right after you make the recommendation or offer which one of those options are going to be best. When you make the recommendation, you need to be quiet, because what happens now is our client, to various degrees, sometimes it's instantaneous, sometimes it takes a little time. Our clients contemplate the options presented. They know it's time to make a decision. And not everybody jumps immediately. Some people take seconds, maybe a little bit longer, to decide if it's the first, second, or third option they're going to go with. If you interrupt that thought process, you will start to lose control and people will start to draw back. For example, I did a ride-along several years back with a nice lady, and I pitched a gentleman an insurance policy, and we got right down to the close. I gave him 3 options, and he looked at those options and kept his mouth shut. What seemed like for minutes, and it was minutes. And for a while, my ride-along was fine, quiet. I was fine. I was going to go as long as it took. And then she just blurted out, "Well, you sure you can do this? You need to think about this some more." And I about pulled what little hair I have left out, because she had interrupted the thought process. And as you can imagine, did he end up buying the insurance? No. So don't interrupt your client's thinking. This is the most critical time for your client in making decisions. Offer the opportunity. Show them the options, then silence until they speak. Number 6 tip is anticipate objections. In a perfect world, we experience no resistance. We don't live, if you haven't noticed, in a perfect world. So there's always going to be opportunities to where our clients may think otherwise or have some kind of resistance or pushback from making a decision today. So don't be shocked, don't be surprised when they push back when you've even done a good job of qualifying. Some people just are going to resist. What we experience is a little bit more resistance over the phone versus face-to-face. Face-to-face, if you follow the methodology of pre-qualifying, goes a little smoother. But over the phone, you especially have to anticipate objections happening and have a good rebuttal system to overcome those and to continue the process on to asking for the sale. Which brings me to point number 7 in closing. It's that you got to answer objection with the ask method. So let me describe what this means. Ask method is the process in which I hear out an objection, sell the product, and then close. So it sounds something like this. If a client says, I need to think about this. I like what I see. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you. The first answer to that is, well, what do you mean by that? How do you mean? So we get a little more context. Well, I need to think about this. This is something I just don't jump into. I need to make my mind up. The response to that is, besides needing to think about it, is there any other things you need to consider besides just giving a general idea of if you're going to do this or not? So I want to isolate that objection, and then from there go to work on it. And generally speaking, a lot of the objections that you're going to hear are going to kind of fall into 2 categories. It's either, number 1, going to be a trust problem. Okay, if you followed my script that I teach, then you should have trust, you should have rapport, but sometimes you miss a few spots. And it comes down to trust. Do they ultimately trust a person over the other end of the phone line or across the table to buy? So you've got to sell yourself a little bit more and sell the reasons why they should buy from you, okay? Sometimes, however, it's price. It just depends. So you've got to be kind of combine all of that into a rebuttal and then close the appointment. So it'll sound something like this. "Mr. Jones, I totally understand where you're coming from, and if you need to think about it, that's fine. But bottom line, here's the thing. You know you need coverage. You told me as much. Your brother had passed away and burdened you, and you know the pain and suffering that comes from not being prepared. Why don't we do this? Let's get started with this plan. If you're concerned about the price, let's start with the lowest one. I don't even know if I can get you qualified. Let's see what we can do." Because the bottom line here, Mr. Jones, is that you told me, and I agree with you, this is important to have. You need to be fully covered. You need peace of mind. So let's do it today so you never have to worry about this. Who do you want your beneficiary to be? So there's that whole phrase there where I've intertwined in the it's okay, you need to think about it, that's the answer. And then I sold the reason why to buy today anyway, which is, hey, let's start with a cheap plan. At least it's a little bit friendlier on price. I sold the reasons why they need to make a decision today because of all the things they've experienced of what happens when someone doesn't make a decision. I tried to go back to their hot button issues as mentioned before. And then I closed, and the close was, who do you want your beneficiary to be? Head down, writing it down, or putting it down into wherever the next step to get to the application. So that is how I deal in a nutshell with most objections. Of course, there's different kinds, but it kind of falls into the same process, if you will, in order to overcome that resistance. So that's closing your insurance presentation. I hope this gives you some perspective on what you can do to get more of that resistance that you experience at the end of your presentation overcome so that you can close more of your presentations and know what to say and how to say it. If you like this video, please subscribe, like the video, of course, thumbs it up. Leave a comment below if you've got any questions or if you just like to say something, I reply to most of them. And if you haven't already, check out what it's like to work in my agency. There's a link, I think, above and below. That should take you to an overview page to learn more about what it's like to work with yours truly. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.